Right, let's have a little look. Got something here. What could it be? How about that little lot? Hammered coins. Let's see if we can't help you find some hammered silver coins. And build up a little collection for you. Right. Hello, all metal detectors. Weather is pretty atrocious outside at the moment. Tried to do a bit of detecting yesterday. Ground was frozen, bit hard work. And I've been kind of collecting ideas to do a series of, I was going to do one long one, but I think I'll break it up into parts. A series of YouTube videos about how to find hammered silver coins. Okay, so I've found 45 so far. I think I found 42 this last year, having started off not finding any. So I'm going to talk about the experiences that I've had and what I've seen from what I've learned from other detectors. Now, what's quite, I was going to say funny, but it's not really funny, but what's quite interesting is looking on YouTube and speaking to people about the first time that they find a hammered silver coin. And it seems to go in, unless like a particular circumstance which I'll talk about, but when people find their first hammered coin, it seems to go through a set process. Stage one is the jubilation phase, where someone's really happy. I found a hammered, ray, maybe even a little dance. Basically jubilation phase. They're happy that they've found it. They've convinced themselves that they've actually found it. Then the second phase is a disbelief at the signal, and they'll say something like, but I can't believe it, it was a really iffy signal, or it was a really rubbish signal, or it was a poor signal. And they'll say something like, I nearly didn't dig it. And there'll be a disbelief phase. So that's stage two. Stage three, and it's over with quickly, is like an anger phase. An anger. You could see like a flash of anger at the poorness of the signal and how it doesn't quite fit in with reality. I think people, because it's a special coin that they've been waiting for, I think they think it's going to be a special signal, as if the detector's suddenly going to start shouting, hammered here, it's a hammered, dig it, for crying out loud, it's a hammered. Which of course the detector doesn't. It doesn't work like that, and we'll come on to that. And then the person will then quickly get over anger, and the fourth phase is kind of a confirmation phase that yes, it really was a poor or iffy, or however they're describing it, signal. So they'll confirm it to themselves, yes, it really was that low. Because the following realization of stage 5 is coming in, where they kind of go, oh no, if that's the signal, how many hammereds have I missed? How many have I walked over? How many have I walked past? So that's the kind of oh no phase, stage 5. And then finally they get on to stage 6, which is a kind of almost a double oh no phase. It's like, oh my god, how many signals am I going to have to dig now if that's the signal for a hammered coin? And an almost a feeling of it's even going to be harder now to find a hammered coin because of all the signals I'm going to have to dig. So that seems to be the process of going through. And I'll talk about a special case, but let's have a look at why that is.
Right, so we're doing a video on the signal of a hammered coin to try and help you find hammered silver coins. And I thought one of the best things for you to compare it to, something that you're probably finding, is more modern silver coins. The top row are full silver, or 92.5% silver, so pre 1920. After 1920 the coins went to these, which are half silver, so that we could use the silver to pay the First World War debt. And then after, I think it's from 1948 onwards, they became half silver. So I think 1948 is the last half silver coin. And then after that they went to 0 silver, so that we could pay the Second World War debt. Send it all to the Yanks, who lent us the money to protect the rest of the world. Right, okay. So this is the signal on the Equinox 800 that... okay, so this is the signal on the Equinox 800. Basically, it's kind of a perfect signal. It was on top of a breeze block, flat, with the detector going across the top and finding what number it kind of settled on. So the half crown is at a banging 35. I don't have the full silver florin. I'd estimate it, the signal, at about a 32. The full silver shilling is a 28. The sixpence a 24. The threepence is a 22 signal. So that little threepence on a full silver is a full 22 signal. The half silver, so from 1920 to 48, the half crown is still a very big 27. The florin, or 2 shilling, is a 25. The shilling is a 21. The sixpence is 18, and the more modern half silver threepence is a 15. So that's the range of signals that you're getting. So I'm going to do an analysis based roughly on the signal for one of those. You're probably finding one of those. So we'll compare hammered coin signals to these coins, and using the shilling as our kind of a bit of a basis as well. I found 45 hammered coins plus a skeet or shattus, or whatever you want to call it, so 46 if you like. There's 7 in the museum, we won't talk about that. You know, I've done a couple of videos on that. So those are the hammered coins. I've been and done the signals for those and put it in a table, and we'll have a little look at that. But before we do that, let's just have a little think about this. So you will have had, hopefully, found a shilling or a sixpence. Okay, so you'll have found a shilling or a sixpence at some point. Now, just want you to think, if you've never found a hammered coin, so we'll just have a quick look, and we'll pick out an Eddie penny. So that's an Eddie penny. If you start finding a lot of hammered coins, then you should find, hopefully, a few Eddie pennies. That's quite a nice one. So if you haven't seen one or held one in your hand, then you're not going to know, are you? But let's just compare it to something that you should know. So that's a sixpence. You'll have found a few of those. Just look at the size of it, thickness of it, and listen. Size of it, thickness. So just want you to imagine what the signal's going to be like. So that's a shilling. Yeah. That's your hammered coin. Right, let's have a look at those signals. So this is a table of all the hammered coins that I've got and the signals that it gave. I didn't actually put the skeet on, the shatus or whatever, and that was all the way down at a 7. Now, so that's only the hammered coins, and if you remember, the threepence, the tiny little threepence, that came in at a 22. So the tiny little threepence was a 22. The sixpence was a 24, and the silver shilling was all the way up at a 28. Now the half silver ones came in lower than that, but those are the signals from the smallest all the way up to the biggest. So if we have a comparison, that, although from a smaller area, and we'll talk about that, that gave a 22 signal. That and that gave a 22 signal. That's the difference of hammered coins. Okay, so all three of those were on a 22 signal on the Equinox. And then it goes down to, I think that gave a 8 on the Equinox, the Elizabeth halfpence. Oop, difficult to pick up. So that gave a signal of an 8. That gave a signal of a 7. Funnily enough, the Portcullis halfpence, Queen Elizabeth, that gave a signal of a 12. So yeah, not sure exactly why, but it did. So it goes up, you know, from 8s, 9s to 22. So quite a range. So let's have a look again. So that's the table. Most in this kind of range here, between 11 and a 17. A few smaller, a few bigger. Okay, so 11 to a 17. So why is that? Basically, first thing to think of is you're looking for low numbers, and we'll have a look at why.
Right, so the reason why hammered coin signals are so much lower, it's very simple. It's just the weight of silver. The hammered coins are very thin. If we have a look at the weight of those 5 more modern coins, that's just over 14 grams of silver. That is actually half silver, but it weighs the same. 11.32, 5.66, 2.83, and a threepence 1.41 grams. So your threepence is 1/10 of your half crown. Yeah, so it take the weight of 10 of those to equal the weight of one of those. But that's loud or louder than nearly all the hammered coins. So let's have a look at the weight of the hammered coins in comparison to those 5.
Right, the spreadsheet that you see in front of you is a spreadsheet mainly showing weight. I've also put the signals on for the Equinox as well at the end column. So first column is the name of the coin. Those in orange are the more modern, let's say Queen Victoria roughly era. They're full silver threepence, sixpence, shilling, florin and half crown. And then a selection of weights of some of the hammered coins, and yeah, so that's the name of the coin, and then that's the weights. Now first thing is, I don't have a set of scales, so those weights are the official weights that they're supposed to be full size. Okay, so I've tried to pick ones for the signal of a full size one, so there may be some slightly variation on there, but that is the official weights of those coins. The third column is a comparison to the weight of a silver shilling. Okay, so hopefully you've found one of them. So it's a comparison to the weight of a shilling. In terms of percentages, the fourth column is exactly the same, but as an approximate fraction of the weight of a shilling, and then the last column is the Equinox 800 signal, straight over a breeze block, so no interference, not on its side or anything like that. Something that you will have found is a silver shilling. That comes in a weight at 5.66, gives out a great signal. So this chart is going to compare everything, each item, to the weight of a shilling. So your shilling weighs just over 5.5 grams. So I've given it a percentage of 100, or a fraction of 1. The Elizabeth sixpence, which is one of those, that's your Elizabeth sixpence, so quite bigger diameter than the shilling. The Elizabeth sixpence only weighs 3 grams. It's 56% of the weight of the shilling. The Edward IV groat, that gives off a nice signal. Again, that's 3 grams, or 54% of the weight of a shilling. It's just a bit heavier than a sixpence. So some people, their first hammered coin they find is a groat, but that puts it right in the kind of signal category of a sixpence. So they carry on looking for that level of signal, and all these others they miss. So let's have a look at the weight comparison. So an Eddie Penny, the famous ubiquitous Eddie Penny, which should be a hammered coin that if you're finding hammered coins you'll find quite a lot of, along with Elizabeth. An Eddie Penny weighs 1.3 grams. That's 23% of the weight of a shilling, or a quarter of the weight of a shilling. Yeah. The sixpence is half the weight of a shilling, so an Eddie Penny is a quarter of the weight of a shilling and half the weight of a sixpence. It's coming in round about the weight of a threepence. Okay. The Elizabeth half groat is a fifth of the weight. The skeet is a fifth of the weight, and then it really starts to drop down. A Charles I 20p is a seventh of the weight of a shilling. A cut halfpenny would be about, so half of an Eddie penny would be approximately a tenth of the weight of a shilling. The Henry VIII sovereign, again roughly a tenth of the weight. The tiny little halfpence, we can have a little look at that. The Henry VIII halfpence is a 14th. That little Elizabeth penny on a signal of a 9 comes down at 1/13 of the weight, 8% of the weight of a shilling. A cut quarter would be 6% of the weight of a shilling, a 17th. And that little Portcullis halfpence is 5% of the weight of a shilling, 1/20th of the weight. So let's have a little look at those. If we have a look at two other coins that are roughly the same size. So the modern, I'll call it modern, the modern, the non-hammered sixpence, that weighs 2.83, and the Elizabeth threepence, that weighs 1.46. So even though it's the same diameter approximately, that's half the weight of that. And that's a 24 signal, and that's a 17 signal. Okay, so that's the shilling, that's the Queen Elizabeth sixpence, that's half the weight of that. The signal on that's a 28, and the signal on that is an 18. Okay, that's a signal of 28, that's a signal of 18. So here's your shilling, here's your portcullis halfpence. Imagine trying to find that on a field. Your detector only detects the lump of silver, the diameter. It can only reflect off the item in the ground. It's not that silver, it's reflecting the signal back up. Just that's going to reflect a hell of a lot more than that. That is 1/20th of that weight. Yeah, if you have the half crown, the weight of that is 50 times the weight of that. That's why these things are hard to find. Yep. So that's a look at the weight. You've got the table, so you can kind of have a bit more of a process of it yourself by pausing it on the weights. Yeah. Well, on to the next. Okay, so from our table of coin signals, you're generally looking at smaller numbers than the numbers that you're used to with more modern silvers and the larger copper coins. So firstly, they're often generally smaller. Okay, a smaller signal. But it's crucial to realise that it's a range of signals. So yes, if you get a 15 signal, you might be thinking to yourself, this could be a hammered coin. We'll talk about that. But it can be, you've seen it's all the way down to a 7, all the way up to a 22. Okay, so something to think about in terms of hammered coins giving out a range of signals. A Eddie penny would give out, could give out a, let's say, a 14 signal, 15 signal, something like that. But not always. So we've got some Eddie pennies here. So some quite nice ones. Now, this gives out a signal around about a 14, maybe 15. Can't remember, but it's round about that. The one below it only gives out a signal of 11. Okay, so why is that? It's because this one, I believe, is a debased coin. So it's not got as high a silver content. So it's the same size roughly, but it's got less silver in. So just like the modern half silvers have got lower signal numbers than the modern full silver, so do some of your ancient coins, whether they were knowingly ripping people off, which they probably were, whether it was on the orders of the king, who knows, or whether it was a moneyer who was risking getting his head chopped off, or worse. Who knows, but you can have debased coins. So you've got 3 there with bits broken off. The middle of those 3 is farm machinery. Whether the others it was just fragile and that's how they came out of the ground, who knows. But obviously they're going to give a lower signal than, so I think that was an 11 as well. And then the ones at the bottom are also, believe it or not, Eddie pennies, those are the same as those, but have been clipped. So bits of the silver have been clipped off. So if you look on that one, so one on the top left, you can see the full, the face and the full flan, is it called, around the outside, and then that flan with all the lettering has been clipped off, and someone's nicked the silver and is trying to convince you that that's still a silver penny. Okay, so whether it was accepted as a full penny, who knows, or whether they tried to do it by weight, again, who knows. But obviously the ones on the bottom are going to give you a lot lower signal than the ones at the top. So from a 15 down to a 10 or something like that. So that's another reason why you might get a range of signals. But you know, finding that on a field is your issue.
Yeah, so we're just out in a freezing cold garden. Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is you'll hear whispers, or maybe some people will kind of, I won't say show off a little bit, but people will talk about, oh, I know what a hammered coin sounds like, I know what signals to listen to and what signals to ignore. I'm not convinced, and you know, right, for a few reasons. Firstly, those hammered coins gave a massive range of signals because of the size. So all the way from a 7 up to a 22. Now I've not found, can you imagine if there was 4 or 5 shillings in a bit of a pile in the ground? That'd be louder than a 22. So you've got pretty much every signal that it could possibly be in a range, because it's not finding silver, it's finding the size of silver, the thickness of silver. That gives you the range of signals, and every other metal is the same. So copper, lead, so you'll have lead signals going from 7 all the way up to 35, depending on how large and how small. It'll be exactly the same for every other piece of metal. So I can't see how someone can identify a 22 as a silver over a 22 of the copper over a 22 of a lead. It's just not possible. You can be dealing with probabilities, and you might even be able to convince yourself. So if you're on a field with mu tubes and you're thinking, I've just dug my 25th mu tube on a 17, this next 17, oh, I know definitely it's a mu tube. You don't. All you're doing is playing probabilities. On that field, because you've had 25 of them, then it is likely to be one, because it's pure probabilities. But it doesn't mean that it is. This was my first hammered coin found. Unbelievable. So, but this is the issue that you're up against. So, this is a musket ball on the same field as that, and that was coming out at a 1920 signal, and this was coming out at a 1920 signal, and but this is the issue, on the same field. So all those musket balls and bullets at the same signal were on the same field as that. I'd been trying to find a hammered coin, and I'm coming off the field tired after a long day, and I heard a 1920 signal, and I thought, it went partly through my mind, is it just going to be another one of these musket balls? But I was thought, maybe it was slightly sharper, who knows. But before I could kind of say forget it, I was digging it, and then the next thing I know, I'm staring at this face and it's just not registering. It's unbelievable coin. A very rare one in northwest England. So that's one of the issues that you're up against in finding hammered coins. it could just be that hammered coin, like I showed you with the field full of lead musket balls, and then all of a sudden on the same signal out pops a groat. So you're only dealing with probabilities, you're not dealing with fact. Right, so talking probabilities, okay? So, and a little word on the enemy signals. So your site that you're looking on might have some hammered coins, might not, but it could be littered with shotgun caps, moo tubes, bullets, bits of lead, bottle tops, ring pulls, bottle caps, animal tags, buttons. So this is the issue that you've got. So back on the enemy. So, and this is the same for all kinds of items depending on your field. So that's a button. That signal would be a hammered coin could give the same signal as that. So you'd have to dig it. And this is the issue that I've had, that you will have. I've found 45 hammered coins. Okay, now let's have a little look. This isn't all of them, but I started to stick buttons in a tin. There's a hell of a lot more than 45 buttons there. So it's maybe your location. I'll come on to this. Maybe you can argue that the actual location is more important than the signal. Okay, so I think the crucial thing over location that I've found is you need the field where you think that there's going to be hammered coins on, and I'll give you some tips on that, compared to a field that you think isn't. And then you dig every signal, everything. Okay, so I know a very, very good detectorist who goes off to an absolute fabulous place to detect. He'll detect all day, and he'll come back and he'll dig over 150 signals. Some days he'll come back with none, sometimes one, sometimes two, occasionally six, but he's digging everything. Okay, so this is the issue that I'd like to point out from this chart. When you're looking for hammered silver coins, you are generally looking for smaller signals. So you're talking about a range of signals, but a lot of the hammered coins are kind of coming out in that kind of 13, through to about 17, with most roundabout in the middle. So you'll hear quite a lot of experienced detectorists going on about things like bits of lead or pesky buttons, because they'd be thinking this could be possibly a hammered coin. Just before we round up, I'll give you a few little tips. Firstly, particularly if you're new to this, just look at the size of finds that you're getting as you come off a field. If you're coming off the field with maybe a silver shilling, the big George III half pences, items of that size, they're roughly that size, aren't they? If that's all you're coming off the field with, then you're missing all the smaller targets. If you're not coming off with tiny little buttons the size of that, or tiny little pieces of lead, tiny little bullets, buttons, small little copperish buttons, if you're not coming off the field with small items, which should be there, then you're missing all those possibilities. Things that'll be your friend are short grass, so hooray for sheep and hooray for when the farmer cuts it for silage. If you're lucky enough to get on ploughed land, you need that will be in your favour. And of course you'll quickly spot that if it's been raining as well, that helps to give off some good signals.
Okay. Okay, so to finish off, I'm going to tell you a little cautionary tale. When people first find their hammered coin, they're often really disappointed at how small and how iffy those signals are. So we've looked at the weight, looked at the debasement. If it's a hammered coin, it's, you know, the chances are it's a bit deeper than other stuff, isn't it? Because it's had longer to settle into the ground. So we're talking probabilities. So it's probably small, it's probably deep, it may be debased. So that's why you're looking at, more often than not, smaller signals. That's the usual case that people are disappointed with their signal. But I've also noticed, it doesn't happen as often, but I've also noticed that sometimes when people find their first hammered coin, they find quite a large one. So either an Elizabeth or a big groat. Now, I've seen this happen more than once, that's actually turned out to be, in a strange way, bad news. Okay, and this is why. That puts the signal, that is a 22. Remember, the signal for that's a 22, the signal for that's a 24. If your first coin is a large groat, your first hammer coin's a large groat, then it can fool you into thinking that you're looking in the normal range of signals and that's where the hammered coins are, when in fact the large groats... Whoop, police are after us. Yeah, so if your first hammered coin is a big shilling, a big groat, a large sixpence, that in a strange way can be quite unlucky, because I've known detectorists think that that's what hammered coins sound like and stick in that range of finds. Again, I met an old guy on a dig. This is on one of my first digs. I wish I could find him again. He'd found five large hammered in a line, and then he's never found a hammered coin since. And what he'd done is he kept in his little wallet one of these hammered coins, and when he was on these digs, he would check the signal before digging against that coin. Now, can you believe what a sad case that is, that he's thinking that all hammered coins sound roughly the same, when you can see it's a massive range of signals. Okay, so cautionary tale if your first hammered coin is a large one. Most of them are way below that. Right, I'll get about recording the second video on location.